What are your thoughts on the growth of Norse paganism and Neopaganism in the West? It seems to be a hybrid of postmodernism and ancient paganism. Um, yeah, there is a rise of Neopaganism. This is in many ways completely unsurprising. So we as creatures are religious beings. Like, we are fundamentally at our core religious beings. God has created us to search for meaning, to search for delight and joy and beauty, and not just in the temporal pleasures of this world. We are created to worship. And if we are created to worship, the secular narrative essentially is just not going to work. It's never going to work. It never was going to work. We cannot, as humans, function in that way. So even when you do get the most angry secularists, they have a religious devotion to secularism. The Richard Dawkins of the world, I'm the right age for the new atheist movement. When that became a big thing, and everybody, that thought that was an atheist, they remember they were calling themselves brights because they were smarter than other people. I mean, it's just ridiculous, but it's so silly. But in that movement, there was really an evangelistic fervor, right? A desire to go tell everyone else to be an atheist. And you had the moral high ground in some way because you really had the secret truth that others didn't have. They're dumb religious people. You're an intelligent. That's why you come up with a new name for yourself. You're a bright, unlike those people. And then you start going on these like moral rants about how it's morally wrong to send your kids to a religious school or get a religious education because they're teaching them falsehood. Of course, the entire thing makes no sense because you're basing this on the idea that there is an inherent value to the nature of truth, which is an inherently like moral or religious claim, or claiming something of value, which science isn't equipped to do. Anyway, it becomes a religious thing. This is what always happens with rationalism. That rationalism in and of itself as this bland search for just scientific fact, and that's all that there is, and there's no meaning or purpose or anything, it doesn't work. So you're on the one hand, you could jump into religious fervor for scientism and make scientism its own religion, which happens. But that I don't think holds very well. So it's kind of inevitable that when you're taught there is no meaning, there is no purpose, there is no truth, people are going to start searching in other things. And when the Christian foundations of the Western world collapse, which they have largely collapsed in many ways, what do you expect? People are going to jump to paganism, because what else is there? There's secularism, which is completely unsustainable, or there's Christianity, or there's paganism. So paganism is just kind of what people do. And it's existed since the beginning of time. There's always been paganism. The paganism gives people the desire for things like power. They feel like they can manipulate things. They can control creation in a way. They can control the circumstances around them. And because you can call on this deity or that deity or whatever. So paganism has always existed. It always will exist until Jesus returns. And the West would make more sense in a pagan context than it would in a secular one. And I think what we're seeing now is the complete collapse of secularism and of the West in general, because you cannot have a culture without a common idea of the good. And that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to say we have a culture, but we have no united morality or values or anything. And somehow we can make a cohesive system of government work when we don't agree on anything, fundamental base values. That's completely incoherent, and the whole thing is going to collapse. The West cannot function in the way that it's going. It just can't. So I think there are a number of things that could happen there to kind of replace the current order. And one of those things that could replace the current order is paganism. And that's one of the routes that people are taking. So I don't know, paganism, even the paganism that people have today, though, it's still filtered through Christianity, because there's still Western people who are reading paganism through this like kind of idealized lens through a lot of Christian values. They're not really promoting paganism in its harshest pre-Christian forms for like Germanic peoples or something. Or maybe they are, I don't know, but I don't think you'd want to if you know the realities of what's going on there. Okay. So anyway, it's demonic. Paganism has always been demonic. People are calling on demonic spirits. And guess what? You get results sometimes. I've mentioned before, I had plenty of friends that were pagan. I grew up in like the most pagan area. I live in a very pagan area. I see this stuff all around me all the time. And it is what it is. I see it growing for sure. But I think it will, of course, it will be unfulfilling for people ultimately. But I think at a surface level, it's like search for meaning, desire, search for purpose. This is an easy way to do it that still lets me do what I want, and I can kind of control things.